Welcome to episode 29 of the Resurrection Podcast. I am Acusio Bivona. When you're a man carrying the weight of your own business, you learn very quickly how to bend reality. You use your charisma to calm down an angry client, or you use your capital to buy extra time, and you use your intellect to talk your way out of massive deficits. You spend your entire day bending the rules of the market to your will, and you become incredibly proficient at rationalizing your decisions. But you also likely tell yourself that the extra 20 pounds is just a temporary phase. You tell yourself that you'll finally focus on your health next quarter when the schedule slows down. But you and I both know that the schedule never slows down. You get so good at controlling the narrative that you eventually start to believe you can bend the rules of your own biology. But you cannot out-negotiate physics. You can fake it to your employees, you can fake it to your clients, and you can absolutely fake it to yourself when you look in the mirror. But the second you step under a heavy bar, that fiction completely ends. Today, we're stripping away the illusion of success. We're going to look at the exact reason why your financial momentum is blinding you to your own physical decay, why you must stop hiding behind your bank account, and why the heavy iron is the absolute only honest board member you have left at the table of your life. I myself spent years building an elaborate fiction, and I convinced myself it was the absolute truth. In my career as a fitness and nutrition coach, there have been times where I've been working 14-hour days, waking up at 4:30 in the morning or sometimes earlier to handle client check-ins, putting out their fires, and attempting to aggressively scale my brand. And because my business was growing and my revenue was climbing, I told myself that I was winning. But behind the scenes, there was a real compromise. I was making more money than ever. But ironically, as that coach, I was out of breath walking up a single flight of stairs. I began to completely ignore the daily maintenance of my own hardware. I didn't lift as heavy or as often. I didn't train with the same intensity. And I justified it because I was busy. And because I was highly respected in my industry, and because I felt that I could talk my way through virtually any business problem, I naively thought the rules of physics wouldn't apply to me. And this is exactly what happens to a founder who scales a company from nothing. You build a custom reality. And you may find yourself surrounded with people who tell you exactly what you want to hear, because your vendors want your money. Your employees want their paychecks, and your clients want your attention. Truthfully, there could really be no one in your circle that's incentivized to look you in the eye and actually tell you the truth. They probably see you drinking 5 coffees. They see that you look exhausted, weak, and physically soft. But they just smile and tell you that your presentation was brilliant. And that builds a massive shield out of that success. And you begin to use that financial momentum to deflect the undeniable fact that your physical infrastructure is actively failing. And you could be telling yourself that you're a powerful man because you can sign a heavy check or close a massive deal. But really, you're just confusing financial leverage with actual physical power. So let's look at the physical reality of what happens while you're hiding behind that screen. When you look at your bank account and you see the numbers going up, you make an assumption that the engine is strong. But the real truth of your biology tells a totally different story. As I've said in previous episodes, your body is a highly efficient machine. And it's only going to maintain what you force it to use. And especially if you're past the age of 30 like I am, and you're not actively putting heavy weight on your skeleton, your body immediately begins to break itself down. You could potentially lose massive amounts of muscle every single decade, and your bones can actively become weaker and more fragile because they're no longer required to support a heavy load. You're literally losing the ability to move with speed and generate force. And that means you're shrinking inside your own expensive clothes. Take a look at your actual environment. There's a high chance that you're sitting at a desk for at least 10 hours a day, staring at a monitor, completely detached from the physical world. Yes, you're financially climbing, but biologically, you're collapsing. And you probably feel this when you go to pick up a heavy piece of luggage and your lower back immediately locks up. Or maybe when you're trying to play with your kids and you're completely exhausted in only 4 minutes. Your body is just adapting to the exact environment you've placed it in. And that's an environment of absolute physical comfort and zero heavy demand. You're dormant, man. And you mistake, or can potentially mistake, the extreme mental stress of running the business for actual physical exertion. But mental stress doesn't build muscle, and anxiety doesn't build strong bones. You're running a massive, high-revenue operation on an engine that's quietly rusting from the inside out. And this is exactly where the reality check has to happen. This is exactly why we use the heavy iron. Because when you're a man directing your own operation, you can get entirely too comfortable in a world where the truth is flexible. If a project falls behind, you can sit down with a client and negotiate a new deadline. Or if a deal is falling apart, you can rewrite the contract or throw more cash at the problem until it works. You can manipulate your environment to save yourself. And a lot of times, I know I can attest to this, you can get used to being the smartest guy in the room and feel like the guy who can outmaneuver any obstacle. But in the physical world, underneath that heavy bar, your intellect is entirely useless. Gravity doesn't negotiate. The heavy iron is the absolute only honest board member sitting at the table of your life. It doesn't give a shit about your bank account. It doesn't give a shit how many people work for you, or how successful your last quarter was, or how incredibly articulate you are in a meeting. It only obeys the unbreakable laws of physics. A 400-pound barbell is exactly 400 pounds every single day, all the time. It doesn't care if you only slept for 4 hours. It doesn't care if you're stressed about payroll. And it doesn't care what kind of mood you're in. You can't charm the metal. You can't intimidate it, but it can intimidate you. And you can't spin a narrative to make it lighter. And you definitely can't hire an assistant or a proxy to lift it for you, unfortunately. Your money can't buy you a single ounce of actual strength. You either generate the massive, raw physical force required to move that mass against the pull of gravity, or it pins you to the floor. It is the ultimate, unvarnished physical reality check. And it's beautiful. Because it strips away every single excuse you have ever invented and forces you to confront the exact, undeniable condition of your hardware. And I remember one time that the iron called my own bluff. After months of prioritizing my coaching business over my own physical infrastructure, after months of letting my training slide while I managed everyone else's problems, I finally said, fuck it, I'm going to start lifting heavy again. And I walked in with a lot of arrogance of a man who was making more money than he ever had. So I loaded up a bar with the weight that I used to move with absolute ease when I was in college. I stupidly thought that my past strength was a permanent condition. And I assumed that because I used to be stronger, I still was. I got under that bar. I felt the heavy steel in my back, braced my core, attempted to lift, and said, oh shit. and it completely pinned me. Halfway down, my legs literally started to shake. My core felt like it was collapsing on itself, and when I got to the bottom, I couldn't move an inch. I was trapped. I couldn't talk my way out of it, and I couldn't blame the industry or a bad client. I was the bad client. And I remember that the woman that I was dating at the time thought I was just burnt out from so many sessions and coaching calls. But I knew the dark, undeniable truth. My physical engine was failing. I had become weak. And there was a real humiliation from that truth. Because when you're a man who's used to winning, stepping under a heavy bar and failing is a massive shot to your ego. It violently exposes the massive gap between the powerful man you think you are in your business and the dormant, physically fragile man you've actually allowed yourself to become underneath the clothes. You realize that the expensive watch and the nice car are just hiding a crumbling foundation. But I'm also here to tell you that humiliation is actually a massive gift. Because it's the exact wake-up call that you need to survive. The iron doesn't lie to you to spare your feelings. It doesn't care about your pride. It just gives you the brutal, undeniable physical proof you require to finally stop spinning a fiction, wake up, and start facing reality head on. And when a man that directs his own operation finally realizes his hardware is failing, in my experience, especially with the men that I've coached, their first instinct is almost always to try and buy a shortcut. I think this is common in the instant gratification world that we live in today anyways. And this is true with these men that I coach because that's exactly how they solve their problems in their business. If a department's failing, he throws cash at it. He buys new software, he hires a consultant, or he outsources the friction entirely. So he tries to do this exact same thing with his physical infrastructure. He pays, I don't know, $8,000 or something insane for a cold plunge and puts it in his garage. Then he installs expensive red light panels in his bedroom. Then he buys a $300 ring to track his sleep, and he hires a private chef to make green juices. He's trying to use his cash to perform a transaction, and he attempts to purchase his way out of a massive physical weakness. But like I said earlier, and I've said in previous episodes, you can't bypass physics, man, and you can't buy actual strength. The physical truth is entirely undeniable. The only thing that forces your bones to become dense and your muscles to grow is moving heavy fucking weight. If you place your skeleton under the crushing weight of a heavy barbell, your body has no choice but to adapt, to reinforce itself, and become stronger. If you place it under no load, even if you're tracking your sleep perfectly and drinking the most expensive green juice on the fucking planet, your body will still become fragile, hollow, and weak. There is no amount of sitting passively in freezing cold water that can replace the absolute necessity of forcing your body to bear that heavy load. You think buying a tub of ice makes you tough. Cool. But shivering in your garage doesn't make you strong. It just makes you cold. And yeah, there's some benefit to it, but it just fucking makes you cold. You have to apply massive physical force against a heavy physical resistance. You have to wake up the dormant hardware in your body, and this is the only way to really do it. You can't stretch, plunge, or meditate your way to a powerful physical body. You must voluntarily subject yourself to the heavy, totally uncomfortable demands of the weight room. Now let me teach you how to actually execute the work. And what I'm going to share isn't going to exactly look like what the fitness industry is telling you it should look like. I don't use complex, entertaining workouts. I don't use circus acts that you see fitness influencers. Fuck, I can't talk. I don't use circus acts that you see fitness influencers doing online. Because the reality is, when you're a man carrying the weight of a company, your time is highly valuable and your energy is finite. You don't have time to waste on bullshit exercises that don't move the needle. You need a massive, undeniable return on your investment. And the best way to do that is to focus entirely on basic, heavy movements. These movements include squatting, deadlifting, overhead pressing. These aren't just exercises that make you sweat. They are real structural demands placed on your body. Because when you load a heavy barbell on your back, you're forcing your entire physical infrastructure to organize itself, to stabilize itself, and fight back against that extreme pressure of the weight. You start at the baseline of truth that the iron exposed, even if that means starting with an empty bar. And you systematically, progressively add weight and overload yourself. You add 5 pounds next week. You add 5 pounds the week after that. I've been consistently working out for 19 years. When I do deadlifts, I still add 5 pounds per week. Because the reality of those physics doesn't change no matter how experienced or inexperienced you are. Through that time, you demand more force. You demand that your body stops retreating and starts advancing. You throw away, well, maybe not literally throw away, but metaphorically speaking, you throw away the expensive gadgets, get rid of all the distractions and the noise, and it's just you, your currently failing hardware, and the weight. Because what this does is you're teaching your body how to overcome heavy resistance again. You're taking that dormant, fragile frame and forging it into a fucking weapon. You're not just building muscle. You are rebuilding the strongest version of yourself. You are proving to yourself through undeniable physical work that you still possess the grit and the raw power to push back against the gravity of your own aging. This is not a temporary fix. This is the true foundation of the comeback for the rest of your life. And there is a massive shift that happens when you finally stop fighting the physics. I remember when this shift happened for me. Once that iron completely pinned me to the floor on that squat, I had a choice. I could either walk away, protect my fragile ass ego, and go back to hiding behind the success of my coaching business, or I could surrender to absolute reality of that middle. And I chose to surrender. I had to walk back into that gym the next week, strip the weight off the bar, and start completely over. I had to let go of the powerful image I projected to my clients and accept that physically, I was starting from a bottom I wasn't used to. I stopped trying to outsmart the bar. I stopped looking for a clever shortcut. And I recommitted to just starting to do the heavy, uncomfortable, repetitive work over and over and over and over again. When you spend 3 days a week under that heavy bar, you undergo a massive physical and mental reset. You're training your brain to stop looking for the easy way out. There are no yes men in the squat rack. You can't delegate the pain to an employee. That iron demands your absolute respect. It does not let you cheat the process. And if you lose focus, or if you rush, or if you break your form, the weight does not move, or you're going to fuck yourself up. And you learn the undeniable difference between actual heavy work and just making a lot of noise. That physical truth, brother, heavily bleeds into the way you run your business and your life. When you stop accepting excuses from yourself in the gym, you immediately stop accepting fiction from the people around you. I saw this happen in my own life. I completely, to this day, lost my tolerance for clients who lied about their habits And more importantly, I stopped lying to myself about my own. I stopped making excuses for why I was too busy to train. Because when you know exactly what it takes and what it feels like to grind through a brutal, heavy deadlift, you completely lose your patience for people who complain about the minor friction of their daily tasks. You start demanding the exact same brutal honesty in your business and in your life that the bar demands from your physical infrastructure. You stop creating a narrative. You look at the work with absolute grounded clarity. And the discipline of the iron completely strips away the noise in your life. I promise you, you will become a far more capable, highly effective man because your entire reality is finally anchored in undeniable truth. Oh, man. This one fired me up, but let me start wrapping this up. If you're a man at the helm of your own company, you've likely spent the last decade putting out fires, carrying the weight of payroll, and building a life that most people will never experience. You are so capable and have achieved so much, and you know how to build a company from the ground up. You know how to generate cash, and you know how to lead people through absolute chaos. You've built an incredibly successful life by solving these heavy problems. But your business won't save your failing hardware. All the money in the world can't buy back the bone density and the muscle mass you have let slip away while you were staring at a screen. You can't buy your way out of physical decay, and you can't charm your way out of a failing body. Don't hide behind your bank account. Stop surrounding yourself with people who tell you that you look fine when you know your physical infrastructure is totally failing. And stop accepting the dormant, physically fragile version of yourself as the permanent price of your success. You did not, and I want to really emphasize this, you did not build this incredible life just to be a ghost inside of it. So it's time to face the only honest board member you have left. And if you're ready to strip away the false reality, if you're ready to use the brutal truth of the weight to rebuild your failing hardware, now is the time to make the move. Go to coachkuz.com and access the executive intelligence briefing. From there, you will run your triage audit. I am the man in your corner. We will locate exactly where your physical infrastructure is failing. We will strip away the expensive distractions and the industry nonsense, and we will install the strict, heavy, non-negotiable standards of the Resurrection Protocol to forge your comeback from the ground up. It's time to stop guessing, and it's time to start building. Tune the engine, rebuild the machine, and resurrect the man. I am Acusio Bivona, and I will see you in the work.